Welcome to the Beyond Pain podcast with your hosts, Joe Gambino and Joe LaVacca. Join the two Joes, two physical therapists, as they discuss how to navigate the uncertainties of pain so you can move beyond it and get back to the activities you love most. This podcast is for Joe, and their guests to share their clinical thoughts and ideas based on their collective clinical experiences. Can this information be for you? Maybe, but we cannot know for sure. Therefore, it is always worth talking to your healthcare provider to make the best decisions in your care before you implement anything on this podcast. And please use common sense. Welcome back into the Beyond Pain podcast. I am one of your hosts, Joe Gambino, and I'm here with our other host, Joe LaVacca. You can find us on Instagram at Joe Gambino DBT for myself, at Strength and Motion _PT for LaVacca over there, podcast. Also on Instagram, Beyond Pain Podcast, and on YouTube if you want to watch along as we chat. Cups of Joe _PT over there. Welcome in, everybody.
Love it.
Welcome back, Joe.
Love it. I'm happy to be back, man.
Cold brew here, Joe. Cold brew.
I know. I saw you teasing me the other day, and yeah, I'm going to be honest. I was a little jealous. You know, not going to lie.
I sent you
Definitely
the recipe.
jealous.
You got no excuses.
I know. And you know, the weather's been really nice. Continuation from last week when I was in Hilton Head up until now. The last couple of days in New York City have been very pleasant. I am looking forward to this weekend. As we were chatting off air, lots of little things to celebrate in the coming weeks. I'll be taking a trip with some buddies of mine to celebrate our 40th birthdays as they kind of scatter over the next couple months. So yes, 40 and all the fun joys of turning 40 associated with that. And Gordy's book is only 2 weeks away, 2.5 weeks away from global release. And, you know, I'm going to go on record to say that it's probably going to be The Bible, Walk by Courtney Conley, and, you know, maybe what's my favorite Louis Gifford book? It's over here, Aches and Pains. That's going to be my top three. I'm going to go with, put it here on the podcast first. So
There you go.
if you haven't checked out Courtney's book, you can still pre-order it, and we'll be chatting more and more about it. I'll try to get the girls back on to give us a little rundown of it. But yeah, man, I'm feeling good. And how's your outdoor project coming? How's the mulch in the backyard?
That's all done. All the outdoor projects, I have to finish them all my lawn. That's the last little project for this week. But there's always something to do. That's for sure.
Yeah, of course. Always something to do. Well, I know when we were chatting in Hilton Head, you had thrown a couple of questions at me, and I figured I would volley it back to you today, especially given our conversations the last couple of weeks with Andre and Zach. And if you guys have not heard those episodes, please go check them out. I thought they were a really enlightening view on how to approach rehab and pain, really coming from things from more of a strength-based perspective, really even positivity perspective, you know, thinking about Andre and how happy he was and kind of talking about being a dad and, you know, working out for his kids and everything. But it got me thinking after speaking with them, do you still think that the PT world as a whole is way too focused on deficits and trying to fix a deficit rather than promoting strength? And by strength, I could mean multiple things, like your personality, your relationships, like all the things that are going good in your life seem to be getting swept under the rug.
Yeah.
So I was wondering how much you kind of consider that with your clients, this whole strength versus weaknesses.
Yeah, I think, and I've been reminded about this. I feel like I haven't heard it as much in the past, but I've had a few people who I started working with where the no-civic language has been a very, very big factor. And it kind of like reminded me where I think we not only talk about weaknesses like too much and like harp on them, but also talk about them in like a way that can have like a resonate poorly with the person. And I've even seen it with myself sometimes, especially with people like flare-ups, get a little like too focused on pain. And is it getting better? Sometimes that can also have some of its problems, right? So I try to take a step back. I think for me personally, I think the best way to go about it is like I like to educate, right? Like I don't think that we should be shying away from talking about weaknesses. But like the one thing I really like about combining the fitness aspect with the rehab aspect is that once we have those things when we talk about it, there's a opportunity to talk about like this is what we can now do that's going to be a safe entry point into exercise. We can build that confidence and we can work on some of the things that you could like that are like your strengths, right? So we can start having those conversations and push that way. And then in the background, start working on some of those weaknesses. So I think it really needs to be a blend. We definitely want to educate and say, hey, look, people want reasons for why they have pain, right? So I think we need to provide that stuff for them to help them understand what's going on and see what the path is forward. But the conversation also needs to be future based. Like, what are your goals? What does the pathway look like to get here? And what are some of these really good things that are happening for you currently that are going to be the drivers to start that process, while we're trying to catch all these other things up if there's pain and other things that are lingering around.
Yeah, I think you really hit it well at the end there, especially when you're talking about the narratives of people like coming to us. They are looking for a problem to solve. They are not necessarily searching for Joe's positive attitude of, really sorry you can't run 10 miles, but can you walk instead? Or really sorry you haven't been able to get back to deadlifting and squatting. Have you tried hip bridges instead? And that sort of, sometimes to a fault, I think on my own account, comes over too strongly in a lot of initial assessments because I'm always trying to help people reframe all the things that they can do and really shift to a strengths based assessment on, I know you're struggling. Let's even just say that your hip is really weak or your quads are really weak or your rotator cuff is really weak. Well, okay, well, we can, maybe address that over the course of the next 8 to 12 weeks. Although a lot of research coming out now is saying that even for people when they go through strength based programs, don't actually increase their strength and their pain improves. But okay, we can do that. But what's going to make you successful at implementing a rotator cuff strength program? What's going to make you successful at getting your quads stronger? Do you have a gym membership? Do you have someone that's going to watch your kids if you have kids? Do you have a understanding boss or flexible work schedule where you can get to these exercises or you can get to a leg press machine or a barbell 2 to 3 times a week? And when I first read about strength based approaches in healthcare, it was probably 5 or 6 years ago. And I was building a course for Fringe, the company that I used to work for. And I remember this one word coming up over and over again in the research, and it was salutogenesis, which was just really kind of shifting instead of all of a deficit based idea, what were people able to do? And I've shifted a little bit of the questions I try to ask in either initial assessments or follow ups into things like, well, what do you believe you can still do? If you can't run, what do you believe you can do? And that could be walking, it could be running, as we've said on the podcast, 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, and then breaking that up and chopping it up. I've also been asking a little bit more of like, who is in your corner? Like, who is there to support you? The commonality, and I think we've also talked about this, is pain makes people feel so alone. Yet, reading this morning that 1.7 billion people on the planet are suffering from it in some way, shape, or form means you are the furthest from being alone that you could ever be when you're in pain. But that does definitely shrink everyone's world. So I'm wondering, do you have direct questions that you try to ask people about their outside world, about their belief systems? And I'll just pause there.
Yeah, I do. Have been finding myself asking a couple of questions that I've been like over and over again with a lot of these people that I've been working with. And one of them is just, what do they believe will happen in the future if nothing changes, right? Because that gives me a good idea of, is this something they're like catastrophizing? It's like, it's going to get so much worse. I'm never going to get out of pain. Like, obviously, we want to know, like, to your point before, where pain can be, almost feel like isolating, where like it can ruin, like, not necessarily, like, it could actually ruin relationships and stuff like that, make you feel
Sure.
withdrawn and,
Sure.
be more angry and have a harder time maintaining relationships because of it. So I want to get an outlook of like what the future holds. And I also have been asking questions around, well, like, depending on what they answer there, what is the, if it didn't get better, say, what would happen at that point? How would you feel about that? Or what is the scenario, like if this happens, even though I'm not pain free and maybe I couldn't do everything I wanted to do, what are you okay with being able to do even with pain? And this is for people with like very chronic pain. I'm probably not having this conversation with like someone who has like pain for like 4 weeks.
Mhm.
And it's like something that I think we'd be able to get over pretty quickly. And it's not like a major, major issue in their life. But asking those questions, hey, if you were only able to get to this point, would you still be satisfied with that? Would you still be okay with that? And reframing, because I say we just want to know what all the outcomes are going to be and be aware of them and know like, hey, we could get to a place where you're pain free and you're doing all these things, but we also maybe that's doesn't happen just based on a lot of different cards. What if we're able to get to here? Or what do you think if we got to here? And then just having like, and I did this with someone who had an ACL surgery and she wasn't too sure about it. And I was like, well, we need to have all these ranges of outcomes. Like if you think you're going to just like be pain free at the end of it and like never have an issue, I mean, maybe that happens, but maybe you also feel really good, but then every now and again you have little flare ups. Are you okay with that? Maybe you get to a point where there's always a little lingering something going on because you've been dealing with pain for a really long time. Are you okay with low level pain that doesn't stop you from doing anything? And I think once you start to think about these things, I think it helps people kind of better understand what life may look like and what am I okay with, and stop always shooting for this perfect because sometimes it's just not a thing, right?
Yeah.
I know for me personally, my back is going to always sometimes talk to me. I'm okay with that. It doesn't, I haven't had my back stop me or any major flare ups in a very long time. I'm going to knock on wood. To your mulching project, it was 12 cubic yards. It was like 4 hours a day for like 3 or 4 days. My back was like pretty good. I didn't even really feel sore after it.
Yeah, great, great.
Like that's where I'm okay. And if my back was sore, I was actually expecting it to be like, I would have been cool with it. Right. Like, so I know where my rate, now, if I have like a major flare up or something crazy goes on, I'm gonna have to look differently at it potentially. But and I know that stuff may happen, right? I've been dealing with back pain since I was like 25 years old, right? So who knows what the future fully lies for me. But I think we need to get away from this perfect and kind of understand what all these outcomes are, and then just empower ourselves to move forward and continue to do the things that we want to do to the best of our abilities. Because once you slow down or you become scared and you don't do those things anymore, well, it becomes the momentum becomes even harder to move forward and get out of pain and get your body to do more, right? So I think we need to your original question, right? More of your strength, more of the positivity. How can we get you to do more things? Because once you get the ball rolling for somebody, it becomes easier for them to see the pathway forward.
Yeah, and self-efficacy is always this like really big theme I read about with persistent pain. It might be the number one thing that always kind of pops up most consistently anyway. And self-efficacy is just your positive outlook that things are going to be okay, everything will work out. And even with you having pain for, I don't want to, tell everyone how old you are, Joe, but more than 10 years, right? Or dealing with your back pain for more than 10 years, when you went to this project to mulch, right? I don't think you approached it as like, oh no, should I be doing this? How many like scoops of dirt or mulch bags can I throw around before taking a break? Should I pace myself? What about tomorrow? Olivia has a birthday party. Jen's gonna go away with her friends. I got a baby Joey. You just did it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that self-efficacy and building that for people is so important because, as you touched on, the multifactorial elements of pain, push us in so many directions. Your sleep, your relationships. Okay, yes, your physical capacity, but it's your coping
Mm.
strategy, it's your optimism, it's your personality traits, right? So when there's so many things to pick apart, I always tell people this is the greatest gift of pain because it always allows us to establish hope. But I do think the best thing that we can do for people is build this self-efficacy. And I think that starts with analyzing their strengths rather than breaking them down
Mm.
more and more. I know people want to come in and know what's wrong with them, but I really want them to leave knowing what's strong with them.
Mm.
And maybe just like opening up this mindset of, wow, I didn't know I can do all of these things despite my pain.
Right.
I didn't know that I could get in control of it with breathing more, walking more, meditating, or just practicing self compassion is such another one that I tell clients to because pain or maybe the rehab process itself I think puts so much pressure on people to be perfect and be successful. And I was looking at messages this morning on the Coach RX app that I have everyone on, and it always makes me chuckle a little bit when people are like, "Hey, I missed my workout, but I'm going to do it tomorrow." And I'm like, "All right, you don't have to tell me that. I'm not looking at your programming and saying, wow, you have to be 100% successful to hit your goals. That's not the case. If you want to skip the workout, that's okay. If life got in the way, if you were going to take a
Mhm.
walk instead, right? I always will try to give people some buyouts, right? You don't have to go to the gym to eliminate your pain. I know what you need to do to get stronger. I know what you need to do to, build hypertrophy. I kind of know what you need to do to build endurance. But when it comes to pain, I don't have a recipe. So you're skipping the day and going on a 10-minute walk can be just as powerful, maybe even more so than you doing your rehab
Mhm.
exercises, right? Quote unquote. And I know one thing that you and I have implemented, just following along with you on social media and stuff, are these wins, right? Focusing on the wins. And I thought Andre did a great job at that even last week, when he was talking about people, coming back from shoulder pain or deadlifting. It's like, hey, this is the most you've lifted
Mhm.
since you hurt your shoulder, right? This is the most you've been able to deadlift or hang clean, since coming back from that injury. Why are we not celebrating
Right.
that, focusing on that, rather than still thinking about, oh, how far we have to go,
Mhm.
rather than celebrating how far we've come?
Right.
And to me, I think that's just such a big missing link for so many people in persistent pain. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that and see how you were approaching it. But I do think that reflecting on it, this week, that is where my biggest bias comes from as a clinician.
Mhm.
And, maybe, like I said, to a fault. And I've lost patients because of this, where I'm maybe too pragmatic and
Sure.
I'm too positively focused. And sometimes that will result in me not hearing what's really important
Sure.
to them or not doing a good enough job, you know, at least calming them down that we can still have this path forward and they can still be successful. And I don't know if I shared it, but most recently that did happen when, working with someone, she's back to, running 5, 6 miles, which was a big part of her goal to just even get to one
Mhm.
mile, but just always kind of just felt disconnected with her hip and her body. And because I didn't address that enough and I just kept celebrating, major
Mhm.
wins, it came to a point where she was like, well, all right, well, you're not really helping me address these feelings.
Mhm.
It's great that I can run, but I still don't feel connected to myself. And I think I need to go find someone who can do that for me. And that was like a big, eye-opening thing where it was like, hey, as much as we want to focus on the self-efficacy
Yeah.
piece and the strengths, as you put it in the beginning, you people still want, something tangible or something to hold on to. And I think we can do a big balance with that. But I just feel like everyone I meet, they're already so focused on that, right? They're
Mhm.
so driven in that direction that having this scale tip a little bit to sort of say, hey, yeah, okay, cool. I get that, these are some of the opportunities that, you have to build on. But hey, did you look over here? Did you see all the stuff that you can do?
Yeah.
It's super cool, right? And I think even framing it like that or having the deficits and then the strengths, right? Because I want you to remember the last thing we talked about, your strengths, go back to that. And then I think that'll help you with all your
Yeah.
coping strategies and, potentially build some positive well-being. And then who knows where that goes from a, self-efficacy standpoint. I hope they get to a place where you are shoveling mulch and,
That's
mowing
it.
lawns and lifting kids and just being like, oh wow, I didn't think about my core and my rib cage and my breath pattern and, my knee valgus. I just did it. And I think
Yeah.
that's really the whole definition to me of resiliency, right? Is meeting the demands of life or movement as they come without having to overly prep or overly think.
Exactly. I think that's exactly it. I mean, like, I know people who are active. Like, I've been active my whole life. Like, being active is a thing that I enjoy. It's probably part of identity. But at the same time, right, like the things that I do in the gym, right, like I wanted to have like an act, like a more, the thing that I want to happen is the things that happen outside the gym, right? Like, it's great to be in there and hit PRs. Like, that's all great. But if I want to gain weight, like I want to see that happen on the scale and physique wise, right? If I wanted to like make sure I could play golf and play
Mhm.
18 rounds and not be sore afterwards, right? Or like be dead afterwards. Or if I wanted to play 2 rounds of golf on a weekend, right? Like, which I wasn't able to do in the past. Like, these are the things that I really care about. And like, I know that the things that I'm doing in the gym are having a carryover that's supporting my life. And I think a lot of people have a hard time looking at the two, right? It's like, I just need to be in the gym. I need to do X, Y, and Z. And they don't really think of like the why outside of it, right? Like if you wanted to run, running is great, right? How are those things supporting each other, right? And how are we doing all these things that are going to move you there? So I think just like this is why goals, I think, become so important, like understanding those things and are you achieving the things that you want to do, even if it doesn't seem perfect, I think will help in the long run. So, and then I think just last thing I'll say here is just to your point before, where if someone wants something to like feel a certain way, even though things are maybe looking and getting better overall, is that I think we just need to. Sometimes it's the outlook. Sometimes for people, and I've been like I had a couple people, and this is probably not like encompassing everybody, obviously. I ask him like, "Well, what do you expect to happen?" That's another question I've been
Hmm.
asking, and I've been
Hmm.
getting a lot of answers like, "Yeah, I expect like rehab to be a linear process." Like I literally got that
Yeah.
exact answer, and I got an
Yeah.
answer from another person saying like, "I expect to have no pain ever again." Like these
Right.
expectations are some of the real big barriers for people in rehab that make it hard for especially if they were doing it on their own, like hard to see anything through to get to a place of progress. Again, I don't know, we always talk about expectations, right? And we always talk about goals and we always talk about these things. But I think it becomes very, very important. They're probably always going to be there. I think these are the themes that we both work through and probably things that maybe make us different than other people, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Where, we really want to set the expectations. We really want to make sure that you understand like what should be happening, right? So that if you reframe your mind around these things, when the little things pop up, it becomes easier to navigate and becomes less of a inertia stopper in a sense that really
Hmm.
pulls you back and out of it. And like, sure, you may be frustrated, but it shouldn't like make it where it makes it so hard to continue to move forward. And you just like shift plans and do all these other things in this place.
Right. And to think about that closing thought about expectations, I mean, huge. When you don't have the right expectations of a plan, you're going to become frustrated. You're going to become angry. You're going to become hopeless because you're not getting the results that you are
Mhm.
expecting. And when you just shift that, and it's so powerful. It seems so small, but it's so powerful to think like, hey, would you be okay with a 1 out of 10 pain, a 2 out
Yeah.
of 10 pain, a 3 out of 10 pain? And if you're going to be okay with a 2 out of 10 or a 3 out of 10, well, why not a four?
Mhm.
What's the cutoff to tolerance and to your sort of like ability to cope and your ability to live your life? And let's try to focus on that threshold because we know that no process in life is linear. And when we have the right expectations for a plan, we're much more likely to be successful or at the very least satisfied with the outcome. And I think that's where I will leave it. And we could always
Mhm.
pick up next week and continue to elaborate. But any closing thoughts today, my friend?
No, I think we can leave it where it's at.
All
I
right.
think we got a lot of
All
lot of
right.
goodies in here.
All right. Well, Joe, we love you. Listeners, we love you. Thank you for making it this far. And don't forget to come back next week for another exciting episode of the Beyond Pain podcast. And if you are enjoying the show, please like, share, tag a friend, someone that you know it will help and that will really help us get to more ears and spread the good message. See you guys next week.